nets on the shore. Some people think, when everything is okay and all right in my life, then maybe I can move out and serve God. And they're just checking their nets, to see if the net is just all right. And God says, come with the net that you have. Come back into the boat. Come into my presence again. I want to use your life in the deep end. I want to send you out from the comfort zone you've been in for too long. Launch out into the deep end. When Joseph left the shore of South Africa and went all the way to Brazil, that was a deep end. When Shirley Charlton, here in the front row, back in the 70s, in the 60s actually, went all the way to the jungle of the Philippines, that was the deep end. She spent 17 years in the mountains of the Philippines serving Jesus, bringing the gospel to people who've never heard the gospel before. Someone said, why should people hear the gospel twice when some people have never heard it once? Launch out into the deep end. Reaching out to the millions of Muslims in North Africa, that's a deep end. Going to the ghettos of Cape Town, into the prisons, that's deep end. Working on Bible translation, spending 40 years of your life translating the Bible into a language that has never seen the Bible before, in their own language, that's deep end. Going all the way to Bangladesh is deep end. All the way to Turkey. Who wants to go to Turkey? They slaughter missionaries in Turkey. It happened a few weeks ago. There's just a few thousand believers in a nation of 70 million Muslims. That's the deep end. What about if God met you today and said, it's time for you to go to a deep end you've never been to? Because today, 2 billion people across the world are still waiting to hear the message of the gospel. 2 billion, it's a B, not an M. 2 billion people. 1/3 of the population of the world is still waiting for someone to go into the deep end and cast the net for Jesus. 2 billion people after 2,000 years of Christianity. In some places in the world, they've heard of Coca-Cola, but they've never heard of Jesus. Because the man who started Coca-Cola was a man called Woodruff in America. And he got a few men together and he says, I want to start a drink, a black drink with bubbles. And I want everyone in the world, from every generation, every man in the world to drink at least once in a lifetime at Coca-Cola. And he reached his vision. How many of you have drank at least once Coca-Cola? Put your hand up. So Woodruff has won. His vision 90 years ago has made it all the way to Lighthouse in Cape Town. But the vision of Jesus is not reaching Turkey today. The vision of Jesus is not reaching Bangladesh and Pakistan and Laos and parts of China today. Are you ready to move from the shore into the deep end? And Jesus says to Peter, let down your nets. Everyone here who's a child of God has a net. You can keep to your net your talents, your gift, your abilities, and use them on the shore till you die. Or you can take your net and go out into the deep end and cast your talents and your gift for Jesus. Some people like to show their talents, in France, in Brittany, if you've been to France, Brittany, Normandy, you have these big stone houses by the sea. And if you go into those big, nice houses, it's nice and warm, they've put the fire on. And sometimes you have a big fishing net hanging on the wall. And this old fisherman will tell you, back in the 80s, we went out into a big storm in the sea and we caught a big, big fish like that, and you just wonder, that's big, And he's got this net hanging on the wall. And his net is to remind him of the good days in the sea. But his net today is of no use. And some Christians are putting their nets on display. And some of them will tell you, back in the 80s I was serving God. Oh, we had a great time. Revival broke everywhere. In those days we went out and knocked at the doors, and people were so open to the gospel. Now it's quite tough, Room for the new generation to go out into the deep end. And God says, no, your boat is empty. You cannot cast your net on the sand. You'll catch a dead fish. No dead fish for the kingdom of God. You have to go into the deep end to cast your net. What is the talent that God has given you? Some people can sing. Are you willing to sing in the deep end? Some people can talk to kids. They've just got that gift. Can you talk to kids in the deep end? Yesterday at the Bible school, Hugh Fowles was talking about how God has been using him painting. He's a painter. And that's where God has been using him, at the vocational training center that WEG has in Cambodia. In some of the schools we have out in the sticks of Cambodia, teaching kids how to paint. And that's been the key for Hugh to get into the hearts of those families, those children, those young people. That's his net. What is your net? Are you willing to use your net into the deep end for Jesus? There was a missionary. He went out from America when he was 19. John Keith Falconer, back in 1860, 1870. He went to serve God among the Arabians. He went there when he was 19. He died when he was 21. 2 years on the mission field, reaching the Muslims for Jesus. And this is what he wrote. And that's one of the best quotes I have ever read anywhere. I have but one candle of life to burn, and I would rather burn it out in a land filled with darkness than in a land flooded with light. Did you get that? Where are you burning your candle? Where are you casting your nets? Some people say, I'm not called to the mission field. I'm called to stay here. When people say to me, I'm not called to move out to the deep end, to the ends of the world to preach the gospel, I'm not called. I ask them, are you called to stay here? It's one thing to say, I am not called to be there, but are you called then to be here? Can you stand up this morning and say, God has made it very clear, I am to be in this city of Cape Town to cast my net? And maybe he has. If you're not so sure if this is where God wants you to be, maybe he's called you to be somewhere else. When I preach this kind of sermon, people get nervous because they're afraid that the church might be empty next Sunday morning. And they might lose their best people. Why don't we send our best people into the deep end? WEC is looking for people who can go into closed countries. And I won't even mention the names of those countries because we are in a public meeting here. And some people actually come to some WEC meetings to know where WEC is working. We're working in some communist and Muslim countries. We can't even give you the names of those countries. You cannot go into those countries as a normal missionary. On your visa, you have to be a teacher, an engineer, a doctor. And some people in their 50s, in their 60s, they kind of retire. And they have 20 years ahead of them. And they want to go to those closed countries for a few years to bring the gospel of Jesus. I was in Bangkok 2 weeks ago. And then someone gave me a magazine. Actually, I went to this hairdresser in a shopping mall. Can you see the hairstyle? This is a Thai style. So I went into this hairdresser, and I was sitting in that nice, comfortable black leather seat. And this lady came, and she was going to do a shampoo. And then this very strong lady, trying to use the right words here, quite different from me, I would say. She sat 4 rows away. And she was going to have her hair done. And quite somebody, you know, the way she sat. You know. And then suddenly, the guy who was going to cut her hair, this Thai guy, he came and he just fell to the ground and bowed down in front of her. I said, you didn't do that to me. And I said, wow, she must be somebody, this lady. So I kind of whispered to the lady doing my hair, and I said, who is she? She said, she's the princess of Thailand. She's the daughter-in-law of the king of Thailand. Wow. So she had kind of I think she was out before me. They spent more time on my hair than her hair. Kind of felt good, you know. But I was in this shopping mall in Bangkok, and someone gave me a magazine, and it's advertising a book that everyone has to buy. It's the book right now, I guess. It's number 1 on the shelf, you know. It's number 1 here on the list of books you have to buy. And the title of the book is this: 101 Things to Buy Before You Die. And I think one of the stuff you need to buy is that book, actually, you know. That's the way they get the money. 101 things to buy before you die. If I had a book to write, I would say, 1 thing to do before you die. Go out into the deep end and cast your net for Jesus. Because millions of people are still waiting to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Spend the rest of your life casting your net, whether it's in here, in South Africa, if you are called in South Africa, if you're not called in South Africa, maybe somewhere else in Africa. Because in North Africa, you have 1 missionary for 1 million Muslims. I mean, if that doesn't shake us out of our comfort zone, I don't know what will. 1 missionary for 1 million Muslims in North Africa today. And Jesus said to Peter, when you cast your net into the deep end, you will catch many fish. That's a good promise. You will catch many fish. If you go to the deep end, you'll be blessed. Jesus said the fields are white for harvest, but few workers. Few workers. We could say the deep end is full of fish, but few fishermen. When you start leaving the shore to go out into the deep end, some people in the crowd might not be so happy to see you go. Some folks might say, it was so good to have you on the shore. Why do you want to go into the deep end? I mean, why do you want to go to Kazakhstan? I mean, you can't even spell Kazakhstan. You know, you can't even find it on the map. You want to go to Kazakhstan. We know most people have never heard the gospel. I mean, come on, come on. Life on the shore was so much better. Are you willing to go? Even if your friends say, man, what a nut. He's going out, he might never come back. But the good news is, when you go out into the deep end, you will never drown. Because Jesus will be with you in the boat. You're safer with Jesus in the boat, out in the deep end, than all by yourself on the shore. You're safer in the will of God than all by yourself away from God. Can you move today into that empty boat? You'll have many storms in the boat. The boat will be shaken left and right. The water might get in at times, but you will never drown. Never, never drown, because Jesus is inside the boat. Sometime in Cambodia, I feel like going back to the shore. In the 8 years I've been there, we've been through so much as a team. I remember when we went through, I've got a whole list here, I don't have time to, some of the stuff, the WEC team, there's 21 of us in WEC Cambodia and 42 full-time Cambodian workers, 63 of us. And some have some horrendous stories because they left the shore to go into the deep end. But none of them have drowned. They're still in the deep end today because Jesus is in the boat. If you're going out with Jesus, you're safe. He will be with you in your boat. And many of you are out in the deep end. And on Monday, you'll be out in the deep end again.